Hello again and welcome back to our course on PSE 15. In this section we're going to look at using colour swatches. If you've ever bought fabric, material, curtains, etc., very often somebody visiting your home, or if you go to a store, you will be shown samples with all sorts of examples of the colours that are available, materials, textures, etc. Swatches in PSE 15 are pretty much the same idea. There is a swatches panel, colour swatches. I can open the colour swatches panel. These swatches are arranged into a number of libraries. At the moment, the library I have selected is WebSafe Colours. I mentioned WebSafe Colours earlier on in the course. The set of WebSafe Colours is the set of colours that are usable in the maximum number of browsers, devices, and so on. But there are a number of other libraries. There is a default library, there is a web hues library, and so on. You can create your own colour swatches, and by grouping colour swatches together you can make it very easy to access a set of colours that you use frequently. For instance, if you have colours associated with your company's brand, you may want to set those up in such a way that you can easily access them. Let's take a look at a pretty typical example of how I might use colour swatches. Let's suppose that the current foreground and background colours are the colours that I use very frequently in many of the jobs that I do, and they're very much associated with my company brand. What I can do is to add those two colours to one of the libraries. I'm going to add them to the default library, and then that will make them very easily accessible to me. In fact, if I wanted to, I could clear all of the other colours out of the default library and just have those two, but save that revised library with a new name, so that in effect my old default library remains intact and my new default library becomes a very personalised, customised library for me. I'll show you the sort of thing I mean. All I'm going to do though is to add these two to the current default. So by default, if I add a swatch, it uses the current foreground colour. So if I click on the button here, create new colour swatch of foreground colour. So if I click that and type, that colour will be saved as part of the new library with that name, Toby Foreground. Look at the bottom of the swatches in default. You'll see this one gets added. And then I can do the same with the background. A very easy way of doing that is to use that facility to swap foreground and background colours, and then I can use the same approach and call this one Toby Background. Let me switch them back to the way that I normally use them, and I now have an updated default library. Note the little asterisk to the left of default. That indicates that I have unsaved changes. When it comes to managing these libraries, I've got a couple of options. One option is Save Swatches, which will enable me to save this current library with a name of my choosing, or I can go into the Preset Manager and achieve effectively the same thing. But just for the sake of simplicity here, let's say Save Swatches. What I then do is to type in a name for my swatch library. I'm calling this one tobyswatches.aco. Click on Save. By the way, if you want to know where these libraries are kept, you can check in the Elements PDF, but on my system you can see what is the standard default for the location of these on a PC. Click on Save, and that is now saved. Now the next time I open PSE, that library will appear. So let me close and reopen. Now if I go up to the colour swatches panel, click on the list of colour swatches, there is Toby Swatches. Note that default doesn't have my two colours, so the default library is still the way that it was, but then I also have Toby Swatches, which includes those two colours, Toby Foreground, Toby Background. And as I mentioned earlier, I could just clear out everything else here and concentrate on only the specific colours that I use for my work in one of these libraries. And if you go to the Preset Manager, by the way, You have various options there for deleting swatches, saving sets of swatches, renaming them and so on. I'm not going to go into that now. There's quite a lot of help on the preset manager available, but hopefully that gives you a good idea of what you can do with colour swatches, and it's a great way of putting the colours you use frequently together in a convenient way and using them in many different PSE jobs. That's the end of this section. I'll see you in the next one.